have a lot of questions that have come in, and I'm going to combine 3 questions here. The central thought is the same. Most of the giants have been formed by individual people who pursued their dream out of the norm at an early age with support from the society. How can we bring such a culture to Singapore? And combine that with the other question. It is said that the best age to identify potential and learn is right after high school. How do we make sure it thrives and coexists with an important program like the National Service? So I'm going to request Mr. Lim to take that first.
I consider myself very lucky because the 1,300 that we supported is actually derived from another factor of 5 to 6 because the selectivity is at 1 in 6. And I get the privilege of interviewing every single one of them. And I feel very young because every year I go through the process of engaging people at 18-year-old. You can never get old when you constantly engage people at 18-year-old. So I actually get to hear how they think, why they think what they think, and create that kind of opportunities for them to do wonderful things. Given my previous background, I would rather not comment on the national service, but instead talk about the kind of, I would not say risk-taking, but the kind of flexibility that we are introducing to really let those that can run as fast in the direction that they are passionate about. I mentioned one of the A-star scholars, after 1 year at Stanford, joined Coursera, became the chief technology officer. What happened was, in fact, when he wanted to join Coursera, the first thing he did was to write in to say, I have to leave the scholarship. And in a typical Singaporean bureaucratic manner, the staff in the graduate academy processed it and said, well, we have an application to leave the scholarship. So it got sent to me, you know, we all do everything on email. So I said, why is he leaving the scholarship? He's such a good student, you know. So he came back and said, oh, he's joining a startup. So in my mind, it wasn't very clear. So which kind of startup? So he came back, Coursera. So I said, okay, but what is he going to do there? And then finally it transpired that he was going to be the chief technology officer. So I said, this is wonderful. We should celebrate, get the message out. These are the kind of things that you should be doing. And then we said, don't worry, just go and, you know, do Coursera. Coursera may prosper and then, you know, you come back and do things with us. Or Coursera may disappear after 3 months. Then you can go back to your PhD. You never know when it first started. So that became a salutary message. And we now have a lot of the A-star scholars. Some of them finished PhD, went out to the startups. But some of them, in fact, halfway through the PhD, they are doing some of these activities. Some of them actually do this from undergraduate. And this is the kind of mood, this is the kind of attitude that we need the young people to have. And the more we signal this, the more we share this kind of story, the more we get the message out, I think the more the young people will actually go into all these exciting activities.
Thank you. Steve, the next question is for you. Under your leadership, your organization launched a scheme that gives new startups a crack at government technology deals. Could you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. So when we started speaking to a lot of small organizations, especially startups that did not yet have business in Singapore, like any good organization, we said, let's listen and understand what's happening. And we went to these organizations and to investors and to a big community and tried to educate ourselves. And in simple terms, the procurement policies that are in place to protect government from misbehavior unintentionally don't allow a small organization, especially a startup without a track record, to participate. And so at the same time, we had different government agencies saying to IDA, we want more innovation, we want more disruption, we want more exciting new things, bring them to us. And we tried to explain, if that's what we would like to do, then we need to be open to small companies, we need to think about taking some educated risk. And so in order to bridge that gap, we created a program at IDA called Accreditation at IDA. So we perform due diligence that says we understand the founders, the financing, the product roadmap. So for an organization that has no product and is operating on a shoestring with no funding other than friends and family, that's not the kind of organization we're trying to accredit because there's just too big a gap. But for an organization that has at least a working product that would like to try and have a use case and a reference and a relationship with some part of government to further expand what they're capable of doing and also bring new ideas to government. We'd like to understand how to help give confidence to the agency that we've looked at it, we think they're for real, we think it's worth taking a chance. And so the program allows that bridge to be built. We then wrap around that little company to do everything we can as IDA to make sure that they successfully deliver, and therefore it's a good experience for the little firm and a good experience for Gov, and ideally it's a virtuous cycle and off we go.
Question is, do we have experienced mentors in Singapore who can encourage entrepreneurs here in Singapore?
The different government units in the past, I would say 10 years ago, were trying to set up these mentorship programs, and I would invariably tell them, don't do it because you're not going to be able to find the people. I've stopped saying that about 5 years ago. Simply because we've started to have a trickle of companies come out. You know, $3 billion, $4 billion of market cap over the last 5 years is nothing to laugh at, right? So the people coming out of those systems are coming back into the system as investors. Like Leslie Lowe, for example, he's got this incubator, he's investing in 10 deals a month, sorry, not a month, a year, 12, I think. And so there's a whole bunch of folks, you know, there was a $100 million exit just a few weeks ago, another $500 million exit a few months ago. Actually, that's still going through regulatory vetting. But these people don't just retire, right? And in fact, some of them are young. The Zopim guys are probably worth $50 million total now, right? And they are in their 20s and early 30s, right? So they will circulate, they will mentor, the next generation comes up. The starting part is very, very slow, right? But once you get a number, if each mentor can support, you know, 10 to 20 other groups, you can see the combinatorial explosion that will come. And this is just in Singapore, by the way.
So just to build on that briefly, when Chuan talked about talent and talent development, and Peng talked about Zopim, that's a great hybrid story, because for those that may know, it was NUS kids that went on what's called NOC, so NUS overseas, spent some time in California, thought some great things, met some great people, developed some great energy and ideas, came back and built a company which they went on and sold. And so the more that we can have this learning from within and learning from outside and create that cycle, that circle. So there are a lot of mentors, but we need to continue to provide the capability for programs like NOC to be a great learning experience and vehicle for those that have an interest and an appetite. We just handed out 40 scholarships yesterday afternoon at the IDA scholarships environment, and at least half those kids plan to have a hybrid course of study that includes both Singapore and non-Singapore universities, but all of them said, and I'd like to come back and build something here. So that would be our ideal outcome.
Yes, Buch, you wanted to ask something?
So the whole IIT brand got created because of all the Indian entrepreneurs in the valley. So Chuan, when you're working with all of these stuff and getting the scientists from France and Italy and so on, you told me, why can't we tap that same energy and leverage it in what you call the larger ecosystem, the larger system around Southeast? You know, it's happening a lot more on the VC side than is happening on the tech and new development side. Is there a way we can tap into it more actively?
Absolutely. We already have a lot of Indians within our research laboratories. This is just coming from A-Star side. Number of them are involved in startup activities. So absolutely. The reason why we went beyond Asia is because we don't want in Singapore just to be an Asian research hub. We want to make sure that Singapore is the only international research hub in Asia. This is why going beyond Asia is important. But quite clearly, we are very mindful that Singapore is attractive, because I like to tell the people looking at Singapore in relation to Asia that within a 7-hour flight radius, we are more than half the world. There's the two fantastic rocket engine of India and China, plus the enormous market in Southeast Asia of 600 million. This is more than half the world. And Singapore is one of the leading cities in this whole ecosystem. So obviously, we have to do a lot more with India.
I sat on the NRF board, I think, for a number of years, together with Chuan actually. And one of the things that was clear to me, and if you're not in the business, it might be hard to tell apart the differences between sort of researchers, scientists, and entrepreneurs, sort of technically driven entrepreneurs. It's a huge difference, right? The only university on the planet that I know of that, and maybe two that I know of that's kind of porous, that the boundary is kind of porous is Stanford and maybe MIT, right? Most universities is, research, and then the people that do entrepreneurship stuff, very different. So it's two different sets of groups. One generates knowledge, the other one generates value creation in the economy. So I think you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve. You will need the knowledge generation to create the value, but it's a different group of people.
I spent a fair bit of time engaging different cities, different countries on their research innovation enterprise system. So recently we decided to take a deep dive into one location in the US. This is New York State and New York University. I just want to mention a conversation I had with the new president of Rockefeller University. Rockefeller is probably one of the most basic research biomedical sciences university in the whole of US, but the new president came from an interesting background. He's a respected academic, but for many years he was running Genentech. So he actually came from industry research. So over breakfast, we were talking about the research enterprise in New York City and whether in fact New York is achieving impact. So he gave me very simple number. So in the case of New York, actually they came in second in the whole US in terms of federal grant attracted, especially from NIH, which is a $30 billion annual award effort. So New York actually attract second in the whole ranking amongst the US. But when it comes to VC funding attracted, New York is dismal. So he pointed to me that in the case of Boston, for every dollar of NIH, for every dollar of federal grant attracted, Boston will be able to get about 42 cents in terms of VC funding. When it comes to New York, it's less than 4 cents. So research excellence is not a guarantee of impact. You need to do a lot more to achieve impact. And I completely agree with Peng, which is why even though I talk about the research talent, we spend a lot of effort now recruiting a whole spectrum of talent along the translational and innovation value chain. You need the entrepreneurs, you need the mentors, you need a whole range of people. That's why scholars going out to become IP, managing IP, commercializing, going to businesses, these are all very important part of the ecosystem. Excellence does not translate to impact. You need to do a lot more.
It's really a wonderful session, and I would like to sincerely thank all our panelists.